ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about laziness. Now, some of us don't like that word. It feels heavy, it feels uncomfortable. But let's call it what it is, because we can't fix what we won't face. Laziness is that invisible weight that keeps us from showing up for our own lives. It's that voice in your head that says, I'll do it tomorrow, knowing full well tomorrow never comes. But here's the truth: laziness doesn't define you. It's a habit. And like any habit, it can be broken. The key lies in understanding why it's there in the first place. Often, laziness stems from fear of failure, fear of the unknown, or fear of stepping outside your comfort zone. It's easy to stay still when you're afraid, but easy doesn't lead to greatness. Let me ask you this: what would your life look like if you were no longer held back by that invisible force? What if, instead of procrastinating, you acted with intention and purpose every single day? The good news is you don't need a dramatic overhaul to start killing your laziness. It begins with small, intentional actions. We all know it's easy to dream big, but dreams remain just that, dreams, without the discipline to back them up. Killing your laziness isn't about working yourself to exhaustion. It's about consistency. Showing up for yourself, even when you don't feel like it. Start with setting clear goals. When your vision is clear, your energy has direction. You can't fight laziness if you don't know what you're fighting for. What is it that you truly want to achieve? What impact do you want to make? Write it down, look at it every day, and use it as fuel when the temptation to procrastinate sneaks in. And let's talk about your environment for a minute. The people you surround yourself with, the space you inhabit, the media you consume, it all matters. If you want to kill your laziness, start surrounding yourself with energy that inspires action. Find mentors, read books, listen to podcasts, immerse yourself in positivity and progress. Laziness thrives in environments that allow it. Change your surroundings, and you'll start to change your mindset. But above all, remember this: it's okay to stumble. Killing your laziness isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. Celebrate your small wins. Every time you push past the temptation to put something off, you're building momentum. And that momentum will carry you further than you ever thought possible. So the next time you feel that weight of laziness creeping in, remind yourself of this: you have the power to kill it. Your potential is too great to be dimmed by inactivity. Take that first step today, however small it may seem, and watch how your life transforms. Laziness is often misunderstood. We think of it as a personal flaw, something we're born with or destined to struggle with forever. But the truth is, laziness is more complex than that. It doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It often has deeper roots that go unnoticed, like fear, uncertainty, or even the stories we tell ourselves about what we're capable of. Think about it for a moment. When was the last time you put off something important, telling yourself, I'll get to it later? We've all been there, and in that moment it feels almost harmless. But the real question is, why did we delay in the first place? More often than not, laziness is a surface-level response to something deeper, something we may not even realize we're grappling with. Fear is one of the most common roots of laziness. It might not always feel like fear in the traditional sense, but it manifests in subtle ways. We may fear failing at a task, fear that we won't live up to the expectations we or others have set for us, or fear stepping into unknown territory. When fear takes hold, it's easier to stay comfortable and avoid confronting whatever challenges lie ahead. That avoidance is what we often label as laziness. But let's be clear, you're not lazy because you lack ambition. You're not lazy because you don't care. You're lazy because in that moment, fear has convinced you that doing nothing is safer than trying and potentially failing. But here's the thing about fear: it's a poor guide. It protects us from immediate discomfort, but in the long run, it keeps us stuck. The more we give in to that fear, the more laziness takes root. Another root cause of laziness is self-doubt. When we don't believe in ourselves, when we think that we're not good enough, or that we don't have what it takes to succeed, it's easier to avoid trying altogether. We think, why bother if I'm just going to fail in that? Right there is where laziness finds fertile ground. It grows in the space where our self-confidence should be. It's much easier to procrastinate, to delay, to not put in the effort, than to face the possibility that our efforts might not lead to success. But what if I told you that laziness is not the problem? It's a symptom of a deeper issue. It's not that you're incapable or unmotivated, it's that you haven't addressed what's causing the inaction. Understanding the root of laziness is the first step toward overcoming it. Instead of beating yourself up for not getting things done, take a step back and ask, why am I hesitating? What am I afraid of? What am I unsure about? Sometimes the answer is as simple as not having enough clarity. When we're unsure about what to do or how to do it, we become overwhelmed, and laziness becomes a way to escape that feeling. It's not that we don't want to act, it's that we don't know where to start. In these moments, laziness is not about unwillingness. It's about a lack of direction. So how do you begin to tackle laziness when it's rooted in fear, self-doubt, or uncertainty? First, acknowledge that these feelings are normal. Everyone experiences them at some point. But don't let them define you. Once you recognize that laziness is masking something deeper, you can begin to address it directly. If it's fear, ask yourself what the worst outcome could be, and then ask yourself how you'd handle it. If it's self-doubt, challenge that narrative. What evidence do you have that you can't succeed? Often the stories we tell ourselves are not based on facts but on assumptions. And if it's a lack of clarity, take the time to break things down. Create a plan, even if it's a simple one. Having clear, actionable steps can make all the difference in moving past the paralysis that often accompanies laziness. Laziness isn't a permanent state. It's a response to an underlying cause. The more we understand what drives it, the better equipped we are to confront and overcome it. Killing your laziness starts with digging deep, identifying the roots, and pulling them out one by one. You have the power to do this. And once you start, you'll realize that the barriers weren't as strong as you thought. Intentional action is the cornerstone of overcoming laziness. It's not just about getting things done, it's about doing things with a clear sense of purpose. Often people fall into laziness because they lack a concrete plan or direction. They move through life passively, waiting for motivation to strike or for circumstances to change before they act. But here's the truth: motivation doesn't come first. Action does. And not just any action, intentional, deliberate action. Intentional action means knowing what you want and taking steps toward it every single day, even when you don't feel like it. Laziness thrives when there is no clear objective, but when you focus on purposeful action, you begin to chip away at the mental barriers that hold you back. Think of it like this. Imagine you're setting out on a journey without a map. You might wander aimlessly, get distracted, or stop entirely because you don't know where you're headed. This is what happens when we don't act with intention. We drift. And in that drifting, laziness finds room to grow. But once you create a map for yourself, once you define your destination and plot your course, you start moving with purpose. That's when things begin to change. The first step in practicing intentional action is identifying what you truly want to accomplish. This might sound simple, but many people struggle with it. They have vague ideas of success or achievement, but they haven't taken the time to define what that looks like in concrete terms. For example, instead of saying, I want to be successful, you could say, I want to grow my business by 20% over the next year. That's a clear, measurable goal. And it gives you something to work toward. Once you have a clear goal in mind, the next step is to break it down into smaller, manageable tasks. This is where many people falter. They see the big picture but get overwhelmed by the sheer scale of what they want to achieve. That overwhelm can easily lead to procrastination, which then spirals into laziness. But when you break your goal into bite-sized steps, it becomes far less intimidating. Instead of focusing on the mountain, focus on the next step in front of you. For instance, If your goal is to write a book, don't think about finishing the entire manuscript. Instead, set a small, actionable goal like writing 1 page a day. 1 page might not seem like much, but over time it adds up. And that's the key. Intentional action isn't about massive leaps forward. It's about consistent, deliberate progress. Small steps taken consistently will get you further than waiting for the perfect moment to take a giant leap. Intentional action also requires discipline. Discipline is what keeps you moving forward, even when motivation is nowhere to be found. Many people make the mistake of waiting until they feel like doing something. They assume that successful people are always motivated, always inspired. But the reality is, even the most accomplished individuals experience days when they don't want to work, when they don't feel motivated. The difference is that they act anyway. They don't let their emotions dictate their actions. This is where the concept of habits comes in. When you build habits around intentional action, you take the guesswork out of the equation. You don't have to rely on how you feel in the moment because you've already established a routine. Let's say you've committed to working out 3 times a week. If that's your routine, you're far more likely to stick with it, even on days when you're tired or busy, because it's part of your lifestyle. The same principle applies to any goal you're working toward. The more you can turn intentional action into a habit, the less room there is for laziness. You're not leaving things up to chance or waiting for inspiration to strike. You're taking control of your actions, which puts you in control of your life. And here's the thing, the more you act with intention, the easier it becomes. Every time you take deliberate action, you're reinforcing a pattern of behavior. Over time, that pattern becomes stronger, and the resistance you once felt starts to fade. What was once difficult or tedious becomes second nature. And when that happens, laziness has no place to take root. In the end, killing laziness isn't about trying to force yourself to be productive every moment of every day. It's about taking purposeful, consistent steps toward your goals. It's about understanding that action, no matter how small, leads to progress, and progress leads to momentum. And once you have momentum on your side, laziness doesn't stand a chance. Every intentional action you take is a step closer to becoming the person you want to be. When it comes to killing laziness, one of the most important steps is changing your mindset. It's easy to assume that laziness is simply a matter of lacking motivation, but often it's more about how you think than what you do. Our mindset is a powerful force that shapes our behavior, our attitude toward work, and our sense of what's possible. By shifting how you approach your tasks and responsibilities mentally, you can completely transform your productivity and fight off laziness. Many of us have grown up with a fixed mindset about what it means to be productive. We might think that successful people are naturally hardworking, driven, and motivated, while others are just born with a tendency to procrastinate or feel lazy. This kind of thinking creates a rigid divide that can be discouraging. But the truth is, productivity isn't something you're born with, it's something you build through practice and discipline. The first shift in mindset comes from realizing that laziness is not a permanent trait, but a habit that can be changed. Start by recognizing that effort matters more than talent. Too often we place value on the outcome rather than the process. We see someone's success and assume it came easily to them because of their innate abilities. But success is rarely the result of talent alone. It's the result of consistent effort, showing up day after day and pushing through discomfort. People who seem to have boundless energy and motivation aren't necessarily more talented or driven than you. They've simply trained themselves to focus on effort rather than results. This is known as a growth mindset, the belief that through effort, you can improve, learn, and grow. In contrast, a fixed mindset sees challenges as threats. If you believe that success is only for those who are naturally gifted, you might avoid trying altogether for fear of failure. Laziness then becomes a defense mechanism to protect yourself from the disappointment of not meeting high expectations. But here's the shift when you embrace a growth mindset. Challenges become opportunities to learn. Every setback, every moment of procrastination is a chance to grow stronger. It's not about being perfect, it's about making progress. Once you adopt this mindset, you'll find it easier to take action, even when you don't feel like it. Another critical aspect of changing your mindset is reframing how you view work. If you see work as something painful or difficult, your brain will naturally resist it. Laziness thrives when you associate tasks with discomfort or boredom. But what if instead you began to see work as an opportunity to create, to build, to move closer to your goals? The language you use when talking to yourself about work matters. If you constantly tell yourself, I have to do this or I should be doing that, it feels like an obligation, something forced upon you. On the other hand, if you start saying, I get to do this or I choose to do that, you empower yourself to take control of your tasks. This shift in language is small but significant. It turns work from a burden into a choice, and choice is powerful. When you feel like you have a choice, you're more likely to take action and avoid falling into the trap of laziness. Another element of a productive mindset is how you define success. If you only define success by completing large, overwhelming tasks, you'll always feel like you're behind. And that can lead to procrastination. To kill laziness, you need to redefine success in smaller, more manageable terms. Success isn't just about finishing the big project, it's also about making small, consistent strides toward your goals. If you focus on the process rather than the outcome, you'll feel a sense of accomplishment even when you're making gradual progress. This feeling of accomplishment fuels your motivation to keep going, which in turn keeps laziness at bay. Another way to shift your mindset is to embrace the idea of starting before you're ready. Many people fall into laziness because they're waiting for the perfect moment to begin a time when they feel fully prepared, inspired, or motivated. But that perfect moment rarely arrives. The truth is, motivation often follows action, not the other way around. By forcing yourself to take the first step, no matter how small, you start to build momentum. Once you're in motion, your brain starts to adapt, and what seemed impossible or overwhelming at first becomes manageable. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. This is a mindset shift that can revolutionize the way you approach any task. Lastly, cultivate self-compassion. One of the biggest drivers of laziness is the fear of failure or not being good enough. We tend to be our own harshest critics, and when we don't meet our high expectations, we punish ourselves mentally. This negative self-talk can lead to paralysis and procrastination. But by being kinder to yourself, by recognizing that it's okay to struggle, you free yourself from the pressure of perfection. You allow yourself to start, to take small steps, and to keep going even when it's difficult. Killing laziness requires persistence, and persistence is fueled by self-compassion, not self-criticism. In the end, mindset is everything. By shifting your perspective on effort, success, and failure, you can create an internal environment where laziness can't thrive. With the right mindset, you'll find that the resistance you once felt starts to fade, replaced by a desire to take action and move forward, step by step. Setting clear goals is one of the most effective ways to combat laziness. Without a clear sense of direction, it's easy to drift aimlessly, putting off tasks and falling into patterns of procrastination. When you don't have specific goals, it's hard to prioritize your time and effort, and that's when laziness begins to creep in. Having clear goals, however, gives your life structure and purpose, making it easier to stay focused and motivated. The first step in setting clear goals is understanding the difference between vague ambitions and concrete objectives. Many people have general ideas of what they want in life, such as I want to be successful or I want to be healthier. These are admirable aspirations, but they are too broad to inspire consistent action. Without clarity, these ambitions remain abstract, and your mind doesn't know how to turn them into steps you can take today. That's why it's important to transform your ambitions into specific, measurable, and actionable goals. A goal like I want to be successful can be reframed into something more concrete, like I want to increase my business revenue by 20% in the next 6 months instead of I want to be healthier. You can set a goal such as I will exercise for 30 minutes, 5 days a week. For the next 3 months, these specific goals give you something tangible to work toward. They take away the ambiguity and provide you with a clear target. When you know exactly what you're aiming for, it's much easier to take action. Measurable goals are also essential because they allow you to track your progress. When you can measure your efforts, you're able to see whether you're moving closer to your goal or if adjustments are needed. This sense of progress can be incredibly motivating. On the other hand, when you don't set measurable goals, it's hard to gauge how far you've come, which can lead to frustration and ultimately laziness. The simple act of measuring your progress keeps you engaged and encourages you to keep going. Once you set clear, measurable goals, the next step is to break them down into smaller, manageable tasks. A common reason people procrastinate is because their goals seem overwhelming. When a task feels too big, your brain perceives it as difficult or stressful, and as a result, you put it off. But when you break a large goal into smaller tasks, it becomes more approachable. Each small step feels achievable, and as you complete these smaller tasks, you build momentum. Let's say your goal is to write a book. That's a huge, intimidating task if you look at it in its entirety. But if you break it down into smaller steps, like writing 500 words a day or completing 1 chapter per month, it suddenly feels much more doable. Each day you're making progress, and that progress keeps you motivated to continue. This approach prevents laziness because it removes the feeling of being overwhelmed. You're no longer staring at a mountain, you're just taking it 1 step at a time. It's also important to ensure that your goals are time-bound. Without a deadline, goals can feel less urgent, and it becomes easy to push them off for later. Deadlines create a sense of urgency and accountability. If you know you have to complete a task by a specific date, you're less likely to procrastinate. Setting deadlines gives structure to your efforts and makes it clear when you need to take action. Without them, you risk falling into the trap of thinking you have endless time, which fosters laziness. Another essential aspect of setting clear goals is ensuring that they are meaningful to you. Goals that are tied to your personal values and desires are far more motivating than goals that feel like obligations or things you should do. When a goal is aligned with something you truly care about, it's easier to stay committed. On the contrary, if your goals are set by external pressures, whether from society, your family, or your work, it's harder to muster the internal drive to pursue them. To avoid laziness, it's crucial to regularly revisit your goals. Life is dynamic, and your goals should be too. As you grow, learn, and encounter new experiences, your priorities may shift. Periodically reviewing your goals ensures that they remain relevant and inspiring. If a goal no longer excites you or feels aligned with your values, it's okay to adjust it. Staying flexible and adapting your goals when necessary will keep you engaged and prevent you from falling into patterns of inaction. Celebrate your progress along the way. Every time you achieve a small milestone or complete a task that brings you closer to your larger goal, take a moment to acknowledge it. Celebrating these small wins reinforces the positive feelings associated with taking action, making you more likely to continue. It's easy to focus on what's still left to do, but recognizing how far you've come is just as important. These celebrations create positive momentum, and that momentum keeps laziness at bay. In conclusion, setting clear goals provides the direction and structure necessary to defeat laziness. By transforming vague ambitions into specific, measurable, and time-bound objectives, breaking them down into smaller tasks, aligning them with your values, and celebrating progress, you create a system that drives consistent action. When you know what you want and have a plan to get there, laziness has no room to grow. You're too busy moving forward, step by step, toward a future that excites and motivates you. Accountability is one of the most powerful tools in overcoming laziness. When you know that someone else is watching, checking in, or expecting results from you, it adds a layer of responsibility that can be highly motivating. Laziness thrives in isolation, where there's no one to remind you of your goals or to hold you to the commitments you've made. By introducing accountability into your life, you create external pressure that pushes you to take action, even when you don't feel like it. The human mind responds well to social expectations. We are hardwired to care about what others think of us and to live up to the commitments we make, especially when those commitments are known to people we respect or care about. This is why having an accountability partner or group can be so effective. It's not just about someone else checking up on you, it's about you not wanting to let that person down. The simple act of knowing that you will have to report your progress or lack thereof to someone else is often enough to break the cycle of procrastination and laziness. An accountability partner can be a friend, family member, colleague, or mentor. The key is to choose someone who understands your goals and is genuinely interested in helping you succeed. This person should be reliable and willing to check in with you regularly, whether that's daily, weekly, or monthly, depending on the nature of your goals. When you have someone to share your progress with, you're more likely to stay on track because you're no longer operating in a vacuum. You've created a system of external checks and balances that motivates you to take action, knowing that someone else is counting on you to follow through. In addition to one-on-one accountability, group settings can also be highly effective. Many people join mastermind groups, support circles, or even fitness classes for this exact reason. When you're part of a group that shares similar goals or challenges, there's a collective energy that propels everyone forward. You see others taking action, and that inspires you to do the same. There's also a sense of competition, healthy competition, that pushes you to keep up with the group's progress. You don't want to be the one falling behind. And that social pressure can be a great motivator to avoid laziness. Another way to implement accountability is through public commitment. This is when you make your goals known to a wider audience, such as through social media or in front of a group of people. By announcing your intentions publicly, you raise the stakes because more people are now aware of your plans. The more public your commitment, the harder it becomes to back out or procrastinate without feeling a sense of failure or embarrassment. This form of accountability leverages the fear of letting others down or appearing unreliable, which can be a powerful deterrent to laziness. In today's world, technology can also play a significant role in fostering accountability. There are countless apps and platforms designed to help you track your progress and share it with others. Whether it's fitness apps that connect you with friends or productivity tools that allow you to check off tasks and share your milestones, these tools create a digital form of accountability. They serve as reminders, trackers, and motivators, ensuring that you stay on course. Even something as simple as setting a reminder on your phone can serve as a form of self-accountability, pushing you to act when you might otherwise forget or delay. Accountability also extends to setting up consequences for inaction. For some people, the idea of facing a negative consequence is more motivating than the reward of success. This is why some accountability systems incorporate penalties for failing to meet your goals. For example, you might agree with your accountability partner that if you don't complete a task by a certain deadline, you owe them something, whether it's money, a favor, or even an embarrassing social media post. The prospect of facing a consequence, however small, adds an extra layer of motivation to take action and avoid laziness. It's important to remember that accountability is not about shaming or punishing yourself. It's about creating a structure that encourages consistent progress. Accountability partners, groups, or public commitments work best when they are built on support, encouragement, and mutual respect. The goal is not to be harsh or overly critical of yourself when you stumble, but rather to create a system that helps you stay on track and move forward, even when motivation is low. Accountability also fosters a sense of responsibility. When you know that someone else is depending on you to meet your goals, it shifts your perspective. It's no longer just about you. It's about the people who have invested time and energy in supporting your success. This sense of responsibility can be incredibly motivating. You're not just working for yourself, you're working to uphold your commitment to others. It's worth noting that accountability isn't just about external forces. Self-accountability is equally important. This means setting clear standards for yourself and holding yourself to them, even when no one else is watching. Self-accountability requires discipline, honesty, and self-awareness. It means checking in with yourself regularly, reviewing your progress, and adjusting your efforts as needed. While external accountability can be a powerful tool, true progress comes when you can hold yourself accountable, knowing that you're the one responsible for your success or failure. In conclusion, accountability is an essential strategy in defeating laziness. Whether it's through an accountability partner, group, public commitment, or even a digital app, having someone or something to check in with keeps you focused and on track. It adds an element of responsibility that pushes you to act, even when motivation is lacking. With accountability, you're not just accountable to others, you're ultimately accountable to yourself and your goals. And that's what makes it such a powerful tool in overcoming laziness and achieving success. Building momentum is a crucial part of overcoming laziness, and it starts with taking small, consistent actions. Laziness often stems from feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of a task or the number of tasks that need to be completed. When you look at the full scope of what lies ahead, it's easy to feel paralyzed, unsure of where to begin. This paralysis breeds inaction, and inaction feeds laziness. The way to combat this is by focusing on taking small steps rather than trying to tackle everything at once. When you take small, manageable steps toward your goals, you begin to create momentum. At first, these steps might feel insignificant, like they're barely making a dent in the larger picture. But each action, no matter how small, builds upon the last. Over time, these actions compound, and what once seemed like an insurmountable task starts to feel more achievable. The key is consistency. When you make a habit of taking small steps every day, you create a rhythm that keeps you moving forward. This is why the start small approach is so effective in fighting laziness. If you commit to doing just one thing, no matter how minor, it creates a sense of accomplishment. That small success fuels your desire to keep going. For instance, if your goal is to start exercising regularly, committing to just 5 minutes of exercise a day is far less intimidating than committing to an hour-long workout. Once you've completed those 5 minutes, you might find that you're motivated to do more. Even if you stop at 5 minutes, you still take an action, and that action builds momentum. The next day, it will feel easier to do 5 minutes again, and eventually you'll want to increase your effort because the habit is forming. Momentum works in your favor because it turns action into a natural part of your routine. Once you're in motion, it's easier to stay in motion. This principle is known as the law of inertia. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. The same is true for our behavior. The hardest part is often getting started. But once you take that first step, it becomes easier to take the next one. Before you know it, you're making steady progress, and laziness no longer has a stronghold on you. Another benefit of building momentum through small actions is that it helps to overcome the mental resistance that often leads to procrastination. When faced with a large task, your brain may perceive it as difficult or unpleasant, triggering feelings of avoidance. But when you break that task down into tiny, manageable pieces, your brain no longer sees it as a threat. Instead of dreading the task, you start to approach it with a sense of curiosity and willingness because the steps are so small that they don't feel overwhelming.